It is the Christmas special, and we're going to bring you some crackers, some glad tidings, and one or two Christmas turkeys. Hello and welcome to the Climate Show. It's the festive season and the year is drawing to a close, so what better time to look back at what happened in 2023. Coming up on the show...
Yeah, good to see you, all right?
Where's the headgear? Oh, but that we can't use. I sit down with podcaster extraordinaire Alistar Campbell to chat through the politics of 2023 when climate policy became a live issue. And stay with us for some festive cheer as we look at the exciting transformations that could be about to put global emissions into reverse. But first, let's take a look at the temperature data that shows just how remarkable 2023 was. A nightmare before Christmas, if you like. This year is now almost certain to be the hottest on record, and by some margin. And ocean temperatures are also running hotter than ever, with this graph showing how far we are above the average and the two hottest years to date. The wildfire season in North America also smashed records, with the amount of land burned in Canada completely off the charts. And concerns have been raised about the stability of Antarctic sea ice, also hitting record lows this year. So what to make of all that? I'm at Imperial College London to ask a couple of our top climate scientists. Well, let's start with the global temperature. In a sense, it is the big one. Freddie, what drove it this year, and any thoughts about next?
So the main driver of this record-breaking hot year is our burning of fossil fuels. So we are at record high emissions, but since the middle of this year, also a natural phenomenon, it's called El Niño, developed, which means higher ocean temperatures, and that also made at least the second half of this year even hotter. And this El Niño is continuing into next year and probably becoming even stronger, which means that probably we have another record being broken next year.
And talking about records, I mean, the sea ice this year, the shrinkage of it was kind of off the scale in compared to the previous years, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Arctic sea ice is about like the sixth lowest this year, and that's relatively unremarkable in comparison to the absolutely off-the-chain records we saw in the Antarctic. In July, I think we were the area of sea ice that was missing was equivalent to the area of like the 10th largest country. So about 2.5 million square kilometres were missing.
And were there some particular factors that were driving that in 2023?
Antarctic sea ice is super complicated, so it's really hard to untangle all of the exact causes, but this is one of the first years where we've seen a kind of coherent picture around the entire Antarctic, with all the different regions all exhibiting a decline. So it still remains to be seen what the exact causes are, but it's clear we're changing our climate and the Antarctic is responding.
Yeah. Are scientists being listened to as much as they were before?
I don't think so, and I think one of the main reasons of that is because we don't talk about why we're actually doing this. Why do we have the Paris Agreement? The Paris Agreement is a human rights treaty. These wildfires, they are not just destroying forests, they are destroying lives and livelihoods of people. But that's not what we talk about. And I think if we would put that and then say, and this is the science that shows what we need to do in context with that, that would change things.
I think what Freddie says is pretty true. We've made the environment the kind of main protagonist, whereas actually translating that into real human impacts is really crucial if we're going to get that message across.
What about this target of keeping warming to no more than 1.5 degrees above the pre-industrial average? Leaders still like it. It was mentioned by the president of COP. But when you look at the steepness of the emissions cuts required to reach it, it seems quite heroic. Do you think we can do it?
I mean, theoretically, it's still possible, but with every second that we delay action, it gets harder and harder and harder. The best time for action is 40 years ago, but the next best time for action is now.
What, 1.5 alive?
Well, yes, if you ask me as a physicist, absolutely. If you ask me as part of this society, it is looking ever more difficult.
But every tenth of a degree makes a difference, right? So it's even if we don't make 1.5, which is looking unlikely, if we can reduce warming to 1.8 or 2 degrees, that's still better than 3 degrees. And every single increment that we can avoid means tangible impacts for people's lives, their livelihoods, their homes and ecosystems.
If I could ask you one thing, let's say a New Year's wish, what would it be, Ella?
A New Year's wish, meaningful climate action.
Okay. It's a big one. And Freddie?
We always treat the status quo as the best of all possible worlds, which it clearly isn't. But we don't have, as a society, anything really cool to put against it, and I really want us to develop this.
Well, that's set a challenge for us in the media for the year to come.
Yeah, for sure.
Freddie Otto and Ella Gilbert, thank you very much indeed. Well, I'm off to North London now to talk to someone about what's been a pretty eventful year in the politics of climate. While I'm on my way, here's a recap.
Environmental groups have suggested they could once again take legal action against the government over its net zero plan.
Net zero is not just about 2050. We can't keep on kicking the can down the road.
Low traffic neighbourhood areas. It's caused anger that's even led to vandalism and theft.
I'm furious about the fact that ULEZ expansion is going through.
And I hereby declare that the said Steve Tuckwell is duly elected.
The Uxbridge by-election won by the Tories because of their opposition to the ULEZ climate change scheme.
We've got to ask ourselves seriously, are our priorities the priorities of working people?
Ambitious net zero targets have been at the heart of the Tory agenda for years. Now, as PM announcing a retreat.
This country is proud to be a world leader in reaching net zero by 2050. But we simply won't achieve it unless we change.
A climate consensus in place for many years, shattered.
We'll be bringing forward legislation that supports our North Sea oil and gas industry.
The Prime Minister is attending the summit, facing claims that the UK's influence has been dramatically weakened by his series of green U-turns.
Actually, what everyone's spoken to me about today is how the UK is playing a leadership role. They're grateful to us.
Good to see you, all right?
Where's the headgear? Oh. And up here on the Heath, I've met none other than Alistar Campbell, advisor to the Blair government and presenter of the Rest is Politics podcast. Alistar, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Let's have a look at how climate and politics went together in 2023. It became a political football again, and it appeared that climate action, the politicians thought it was unpopular.
It was very, very strange. And I remember Bill Clinton always used to say, I wish I had as much power as the member of a focus group in Detroit. And I spent part of the year wishing I had as much power as a voter in Uxbridge who didn't vote Labour in one by-election. Because it seems to me that out of that by-election came this, I think, myth amongst the Conservatives and the right that going against climate, becoming sort of, warrior for the motorist, warrior for fossil fuels against climate was a popular political position. And I think it's madness. I think they're wrong.
Why do you think they're wrong?
Because I think that the climate, what's happened is that climate has just become yet another kind of culture war issue for this politics that's playing out massively in America with Trump, partly here post-Brexit with the right sort of and the Conservative Party struggling to rediscover what it's about, and also in parts of Europe as well. So it's become a kind of a football, but the game that they're playing, I think, is divorced from where an awful lot of people are.
Well, this is the key thing. I mean, when it comes to public opinion, what does the research show that you've seen?
There is a dichotomy here. On the one hand, if you say to people, are you concerned about climate change? Overwhelmingly yes. Do you think government should do more? Overwhelmingly yes. Where it then gets tricky is if you start to say, and if that means that you have to pay more for this and have less freedom for that, that you might change your view. Now, for some people, that will shift them, and they will become, as it were, less concerned. But for the vast bulk of people, they know it's a problem and they want it sorted. They're willing to do things in the main. Most people are willing to look at changes to lifestyle and so forth. But for the politics, I think it's moved into this place that is actually damaging the debate. I actually think long term it's damaging those politicians who are doing it.
But this wasn't just something for the Tories. The Labour Party seemed to get this slightly anti-climate action mood as well.
Look, if you're the Labour Party, you're Keir Starmer, you're focusing very much on cost of living, economy, health service. But the polling we did showed that cost of energy is right up there. Now, I think that's an argument that you can make about how you need to focus much more on renewables.
Because they're cheap to generate.
Absolutely. Focus much more on, if you like, bringing together the cost of living argument with the climate.
What about when it comes to the election? How and how much do you think climate might play?
I hope that climate will be a big part of it, but I suspect it won't. And I think that's why I actually think the programme that you do is important in this. But I think actually those organisations that campaign on this, they have to make sure their voice gets heard. But I have a hope that what Keir Starmer's doing at the moment is quite ruthlessly focusing on the things that he thinks are necessary to get him into power, and actually in power understands that the scale of change required, not just on climate but on so many other issues, is way bigger than at the moment the political debate seems to be addressing. And so I would hope, for example, that in relation to the climate, there's something, if you like, fairly general in the manifesto about the scale of commitment, about the scale of the challenge. And then when you get in, there's all sorts of things you can do.
Thanks very much indeed, Alistar. Well, when we come back, it's time for a bit of festive cheer. I'll be looking at some of the good news that happened in climate and environment this year. You never know, I may even get a chance to put my hat back on. He wouldn't wear it. Welcome back to the show, and as you can see, I've now dumped my bike and I'm in Sky's pretty festive headquarters. Well, an element of the festivities that many people enjoy is the Festival of Lessons and Carols from King's College Chapel in Cambridge. But in a break with tradition, they've decided to put solar panels on their roof. But not everybody's happy.
The iconic King's College Chapel in Cambridge is more than 500 years old. But up on the roof, something very modern is being installed.
So what we needed to do here was to replace the roof of the chapel, the lead roof. And we thought while we were doing that, well, why didn't we do a bit of a survey to see whether it was worth putting solar panels up here to generate some green energy at the same time. The scaffolding was in place, the builders were here.
And so, 438 solar panels are now being installed. The Dean makes the decision to put them there sound quite simple, but it sparked controversy in the city below.
The chapel is an exceptional building. It's an extraordinary work of art, and its primary value, apart from its use obviously as a chapel, which is its real primary value, should be to conserve it in that way so that it can be appreciated as an extraordinary work of art. One wouldn't put a post-it note on a constable, for example.
The solar panels on this roof will generate all of the electricity the chapel below uses, and they'll help the college as a whole get to net zero by 2030. But they could have put the panels on any roof and not annoyed Historic England, the city planning officer and various locals. Because this isn't just a roof, and that's kind of the point. The top of this iconic building has now become a symbol.
It's not a defacing of the sides of the building. It is here for a serious purpose. And it's representative of our whole project. And by our, I mean, not only King's, the universities, the whole community's project of figuring out what we're going to do about the huge damage that we're causing by not producing green electricity.
So while the carols in this chapel are very traditional, what's on the roof is now anything but. Mickey Carroll, Sky News.
Now, as promised, it's time to bring some festive cheer on the climate show, because there are some developments to be happy about in the world of climate and energy this year. Solar energy is booming, with record amounts being added this year. All the while, the cost is plunging, with solar now the cheapest energy source we have ever had. EVs, electric vehicles, are booming too, with sales up year on year. All of this is contributing to projections that global emissions could start to fall as soon as next year, even in China, which is fast becoming a leader in both EVs and solar power. Well, to talk through this, I'm joined by the man who follows the money, Sky's economics editor, Ed Conway. Ed, I'm really fascinated by this. How does economics react to this move from basing an economy on hydrocarbons to basing it on renewables?
That's it, it's the framing of it. Everything comes back to this. We kind of forget the extent to which basically all economic activity is one way or another turning energy into things, or using energy to do things. And for most of our history, that's been fossil fuel energy, and we need to turn that into other forms of energy if we're going to eliminate carbon emissions. And that, the reason I'm interested in this, the reason I think this is a deeper economic thing that stretches to all parts of the economy, is that energy is everywhere. We should know this over what's happened in the last kind of couple of years. Energy is everywhere, and if we're having to rethink the basis of where we're getting it from, that affects pretty much every occupation, every walk of life.
And we've had sort of 2,000 years of human civilization, which has been based on hydrocarbons and then fossil fuels. Getting off that's a huge deal.
It's going to be massive. I think we have massively underestimated the scale of what we need to do. Some people understand it, within the climate community. But, for politicians, I don't think they knew when they signed up for net zero in 2019 just the scale of how ambitious it would be to get there, because it is massively ambitious. It's massively exciting as well, but it is a massive challenge to try to rethink the basis of everything. The way I think of it is, we are having to rethink the Industrial Revolution, redo the Industrial Revolution all over again.
One specific economic thing that interests me is we've got the price of generating renewable electricity through solar and wind keeps on coming down, yet it doesn't filter into electricity prices. Why not, and is it going to change?
That is a sign of how far we've come in terms of getting better and better at making solar panels and wind turbines and batteries.
They no longer need the subsidy, they're actually undercutting.
They are cheaper in certain prisms. That's the only difficult thing. In one prism, when you're not having to think about kind of backup and storage, they definitely look cheaper, and you're not thinking about the fact that you probably need more wind, megawatts of wind for every megawatt of gas that you're replacing. But this is the difficulty. This is what I find actually kind of fiendishly difficult when I'm looking at climate. There's a lot of people on the kind of fossil fuel side of things who give you one set of numbers. They don't necessarily take into account there are hidden subsidies there as well. And there are a lot of people on the other side who give you another set of numbers, and they don't take into account other
variability.
Trying to find the kind of even point. But as far as I can work out, you're now getting to the point where if we can work out a way of trying to store this power and this energy that you're generating with solar panels and with wind turbines, then we've kind of basically cracked it. The problem is that's like one of the hardest nuts to crack, and we're still working on that, so we're still a way off that particular thing. But everywhere you look, and this is why it's exciting, everywhere you look, there are kind of chinks of light at the end of the tunnel, which suggests, we shouldn't be catastrophist about that. There's a lot of hope out there.
Well, thanks very much, Ed. And Ed's given us plenty to sink our teeth into in 2024, but that is it for this year. We will be back on January the 13th. But before we go, here's a little look back at what fun we had this year. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Welcome to the programme, and welcome to Dartmoor. Welcome to Surrey. This is Lough Neagh in Northern Ireland. We're in Merthyr Tydfil, the heart of Hull. Here at Portsmouth, I'm in Aberdeenshire, enjoying a dram of peated whiskey. Welcome to the jungle. This is the Alain Oasis. I'm in the midst of a swarm of puffins. We'll be going from Brussels to Berlin. Welcome to Dubai, a motorway embankment in Cambridgeshire, surrounded by dead trees. A weird world first. A gas well delivering energy that isn't gas. This is the tallest and newest onshore wind turbine in England, and all the income's going to one of the poorest communities. I experienced the romance of newly rekindled night train travel across Europe. How do you grow food in the desert? Well, like this. Can we catch climate heating carbon dioxide from places like this before it gets into the atmosphere?
6 hectares of drained peatland being restored to what it was more than 80 years ago.
Many of Britain's rivers are badly polluted. Now, citizens are fighting back with the help of some genius shed tech.
That's the last of these 5 beavers to be released.
Bison are these amazing ecosystem engineers. Even their dung is fantastic. It's like a nutrient bomb.
The way it's mixed in with the natural world, with all the roots dangling here and the earth, they're almost like geological seams of our waste sins of the past.
I feel like I'm travelling to the sun.
60 metres below London, and HS2 for poo, if you like.
Just sensory overload in this place, the sight, the smell. This really enables me to indulge my train driver fantasies.
This is amazing.
It's a combination of innovations, both heat pumps and district heating.
Mind your head.
It's time for me to do the sleeping bit now, so good night. See you in Berlin. Back again. This is a favoured selfie spot. It's also where the leaders had their family photo.